Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on our latest stop of this Ohio Innovation Tour. My name is Chris Berry. I'm the president and CEO of OhioX, and my organization does this in partnership with the Ohio Innovation Exchange. You'll hear from them in a moment and on some of their work and how they're bringing university experts, equipment, and services together. And it's some amazing partnerships between the private sector and technology and all the expertise that happens on campuses across the state. This series is part of one that we're doing across Ohio. And so for each stop on this tour, we've been examining and looking at how this relationship between Intel, which is this generational moment of opportunity for our state, and higher education are really creating this new semiconductor industry for Ohio. And so as we've done these stops in places like Southeastern Ohio or Northeastern Ohio, Southwestern Ohio, we get to do two cool things, I think. One is really examine what's happening in those local regions and areas. But then two, since this is a statewide tour, we're a statewide organization, the Ohio Innovation Exchange is statewide as well. We get to really thread it all together and kind of see how this is impacting the whole state with also that localized regional impact. And so these, new industrial partnerships, there's workforce development, there's education, training, there's research. So there's just so much happening to it. And so as we get going throughout, as I mentioned, I'm Chris Berry, so this is our introductory part, but we'll start with an overview and demo from the Ohio Innovation Exchange, and Jeff will take the lead on that. And then we'll hear from Team Intel on their Semiconductor Award program for research, education, and the plans for the future. So we have a few folks from their team that will be joining us. Then we're going to hear from the Ohio State University and what is going on in Columbus and at Ohio State. And then we'll hear from One Columbus. Ted is going to share a little bit from the economic development perspective and where this all ties in and just the opportunity for the Central Ohio region. A quick note is that please submit questions throughout the day via the chat. So as soon as I stop talking and turn it over to Jeff, I'll pop in there as well and start putting in some of this stuff, including some of these links. So we'd very much welcome and recommend, and you'll see it firsthand in a second, checking out the ohioinnovationexchange.org. Jeff will be sharing that and doing a screen share in just a moment. My organization is ohiox.org. And then in the chat, feel free to share your name, organization, city, LinkedIn if you want. So hopefully you can meet someone new. We'll also use the chat for the Q&A. And so I'll again be in there and dropping some of these links, introducing myself. And then as we think about, beyond today, this is an exciting moment. So there's certainly more topics to hear about. What should we cover in future webinars like this as we examine some of these industry and higher education relationships? And so at this point, Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'll stop sharing and we'll welcome you to the virtual stage so we can hear a little bit about the Ohio Innovation Exchange, which is one, making these conversations possible, and two, it's an incredible resource that is somewhat newish. And so hopefully you'll get to learn a little bit more and see firsthand the impact it's having. So Jeff, welcome.
Thank you, Chris, and thanks so much for your incredible co-hosting. You're a master at this. So welcome, everyone, and I appreciate you being here today. I'm just going to take a few minutes and introduce you to the Innovation Exchange if you've never seen it before. As Chris said, it's ohioinnovationexchange.org. We are an initiative of the Ohio Department of Higher Education. Right now, I'm going to demo the tool, and as I do that, I'll talk a little bit about some of the features. Since we're talking today about semiconductors, I thought we'd go ahead and put in a keyword. The way the search engine works is sort of Google-like, a little bit less in some ways. We want you to search by keywords specific to academic disciplines and or keywords in industry. One word at a time seems to work best. What you get back are all the faculty across all our university partners. Right now, there's 10 university partners or institutions with numbers 11, 12, and 13 joining over the summer. You'll hear more about that as the months go on. But you can quickly sort and filter by any institution to see the different faculty experts that are in the field. I'm going to go ahead and filter by Ohio State and go through the list here. And you can see different faculty that have semiconductor in their profile. I was looking for someone. Stephen Ringel is somebody who's been funded by Intel and also leads our Institute for Materials Research. On the left-hand side is his name, title, and his collaboration network. Find that this is of great interest to industry as well as higher ed because it's showing who Steve partners with at Ohio State. And these bubbles can help you lead to their particular profile. So here's Professor Rajan, who is on the call today. You can also click on this extended network, and then that's going to bring in all of the other schools that are part of the Ohio Innovation Exchange. The different colors represent those schools. And of course, you can zoom in and out of this setting. I'm moving really quick because I just want to give you a high level overview. You get a quick bio or summary of the kind of research that he does. Our search engine will pull data from this space as well as from their scholarly works, the titles that are listed here. In many cases, if a publication is public access, you can actually download the publication and read that. Really helpful information when you're looking at licensing a technology from an inventor at one of our institutions. And then in addition to publications, we also index grants for all our faculty. And these are coming from 600 different sponsors, both federal, state, and private sources. And there's often a link to the grant where you can learn more, the abstract of the grant and so on. Navigation is simple. Click on the top left logo, takes you back to the home page. In addition to faculty experts, we also have equipment. Equipment's a bit of a misnomer because it includes much more than research instrumentation or facilities. It also includes things like services, biological materials, database, research opportunities, and so on. You can quickly sort. I like to pull up one of my colleagues that work in the Center for Automotive Research as an example. They've done a really great job of sort of describing what their center is all about, their research capabilities, contact information, and then they've also tagged keywords that help you kind of search in another way, which we'll demo in a little bit. Additionally, they've added associated profiles. So what you're seeing here are faculty that are affiliated with that particular institute. And by any means, if you're ever in the system and can't find something, feel free to reach out to me and we'll give you a personal demo or a quick overview. The last bucket of data is patent data. We have a filter basically on all patents from the state of Ohio that are affiliated with any university in the state. So it doesn't matter if they're part of the Innovation Exchange or not. At any given time, we're showcasing the last 10 years of patents. So right now that's over 42,000 patents across the state. You can click on a title to see the detail. You can filter the data based on assignees. So if you're looking at a particular institution, or if you're looking at fields of research, I always like to show people this. These are the tags that are built in the system. So as records are loaded, we organize them based on sort of academic domains and then all the subdomains. And that's just from the patent database. You can see that. You can also search and click any of these to kind of get details. So for example, we'll go ahead and pull up electronics, sensors, and the like, and you're seeing now a set of 815 patents from all campuses. Again, to navigate or filter, you can use this left-hand side. This is the Ohio Innovation Exchange. This is just my quick intro. I invite you to play around and look and find a collaborator. If you at any point are not getting the kind of information you want, we have this very simple contact us button. You can tell us what kinds of information you're looking for, indicate the campus that you want information from, or just leave it blank and your contact information, and we'll get back to you with the resources. So with that, Chris, let me wrap up and hand it back to you. I'll go ahead and stop sharing.
Great. Well, thank you, Jeff, and a fantastic overview. I put the direct link to the Ohio Innovation Exchange in the chat. And so feel free to check it out, click around as you have a chance. And now we're going to welcome Team Intel to the stage, where they're going to share a little bit about their work, which is so exciting and capturing news throughout Ohio, but really globally. It's an incredible opportunity for the Buckeye State. And so we'll welcome Mindy Murdoch, who's their University Relations Manager. And so, Mindy, thanks so much for being here. And Jeff, if you wouldn't mind, maybe stop sharing and pulling that off.
For some odd reason, Zoom is not giving me an out. So feel free to just, whoever comes up next. I don't have this stop sharing button for some strange reason. I only have a new share.
Yeah, I can't share. It says somebody else is sharing.
So Jeff, it may make sense. You could always just hop off, click out, and click right back in.
There you go. We'll do that. I'll be back.
So,
all right. Thank you.
Sure thing. And as Jeff is doing that, Mindy, if you want to, you can start your intro, and then we can screen share in a second as it's now open.
Okay. So my name is Mindy Murdoch. I am a program director within Intel Labs and Intel, and I am one of the program directors for the SERP program, or the Semiconductor Education and Research Program for Ohio. Can you see my screen now?
It doesn't look like you're sharing quite yet. So there you go. You just started sharing.
Oh, I guess I had to double click on it. Okay.
all good now. Thanks, Mindy.
Okay. So I just wanted to give you guys a quick overview, because we're going to have Sunny Underwood coming on and talking more about supply chain, which we haven't done in the past meeting. So just a quick overview to get everybody familiar with SERP, the SERP program. So Intel announced the $100 million investment in Ohio and in the nation. So we do have a $50 million investment for research and education within Ohio, as well as we're doing a $50 million investment as well in the nation, which is matched by NSF. So it's going to be 100 million. And this is all for semiconductor education and research throughout the country. But today we're here to talk a little bit specifically about Ohio. And I just wanted to let you know what that meant, the first round, we call it the first phase. What we did was we sent out requests for proposals to all institutes, all higher ed institutes in Ohio. We have total funds of about 5 million a year with 50 million. In the first phase, it's going to be 3 years. So it's about $15 million that we're investing. We did send out the RFP and did receive proposals from many institutions. We will do a second and third round approximately in 2024 to 2025 timeframe will be the first one, and the next one will be 26, 27. And again, it's open up to all higher education institutes in Ohio. The areas that we're focused on in the first round for the proposals was really around curriculum development, anything that could be more specific to semiconductors, faculty training to make sure that the educators all across the board are educated in semiconductor, because in this region we know that there aren't semiconductor companies there yet. Also heavily investing in student experimental opportunities. We find that those hands-on opportunities are really what gets students excited about semiconductors. Also, there was opportunity to ask for laboratory equipment upgrades to make sure that the labs were equipped to handle the students that were coming through. And also we were funding, part of it was funding research to advance semiconductor. At a very, very high level, this is what we ended up funding for the first round. I know I said 15 million, but we upped it to 17.7 million because we had so many great proposals. So we chose 8 of those proposals. So we have 8 projects that are being led by Ohio institutions. The results will be, we're investing in over 2,300 scholarships through our investment through the universities and colleges. We're also expecting 9,000 students to come out educated in and around semiconductor with this program, with a large majority of them being from the community college areas. So that's really great for the technicians. Also, although we're only funding 8 projects, we're actually extends the reach. The reach is extended to over 80 plus because of the collaborative nature that these proposals had. It was it's one of the first times I've seen it at Intel where it's been so collaborative among institutes. And this goes from universities, colleges, community colleges, as well as tech centers in the state of Ohio. So it's really an impressive program that we have going, and exciting to see the results. We're starting to see the first round of summer institutes, summer workshops, summer faculty training. So it's really, really getting exciting now as we get through the planning phase the first year and starting to implement and develop and implement phase. So with that, a little bit overview of SERP, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Sunny Underwood, who is in our supply chain operations group. And I'm going to try to stop share. There we go.
Okay, great. Thanks, Melinda. And Chris and Jeff, thank you very much for the opportunity to come in and speak to you guys a little bit about Intel supply chain. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And do let me know when you're able to see the presentation. Are you able to see the presentation?
Not quite yet.
Okay, let me try here again. Let's try this way. Here we go.
That shared it, but it was the Sunny. It was the kind of the Zoom webinar browser.
How about now?
Not right now. Nope.
Okay, 1 second here. I think I know what I need to do here.
You can probably tell that the Intel team is used to using Teams.
We're used to different technology here.
Exactly.
Okay, here we go. How about now?
It's still the browser, Sunny, that kind of shows our Zoom session.
Okay, hold on. Give me one last shot at it here.
Yeah, it's the same. The browser's now coming up. There you go. Perfect.
All right, here we go. Okay, folks, apologize for that. My name is Sunny Underwood. I am the Supply Chain and Ecosystem Director for Ohio. I've been with Intel now for about 26 years and had the pleasure of working at probably about 7 of our different locations around the globe. So great experience with Intel. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our supply chain, give you a high-level overview of supply chain at Intel, and then I'm sure later on we'll have time for questions. So this is a quick snapshot of our manufacturing network. It doesn't include a lot of our research and development centers, but we do research and development in some of these areas here. But you'll see we've got Oregon, Arizona, New Mexico, and then future of Ohio coming up soon. Costa Rica, Ireland, Germany, Israel, Chengdu, Vietnam, and Malaysia. Okay, our supply chain, as you can tell, is very global supply chain. Our scope is plan. So we are actually supply and capacity planning the entire time for the factories. Sourcing, so we source, procure, and then supply management once we have that, have made those procurements. Make, internal manufacturing, construction, equipment, materials assembly, so on and so forth. So it's across the board. And then of course we've got our deliver with our forward and reverse logistics. Currently serving about 2,000 plus customers worldwide, a little more by the numbers. Tens of billions of dollars under spends management currently. 9,000 plus tier 1 suppliers in 85 different countries. What I mean by tier 1 supplier is a supplier that we're actually directly interfacing with on a financial perspective. 20 countries with co-located suppliers, which is something we want to really push in Ohio. And then we've got 90 plus different commodities as well. Diverse spending, something that we really push for in Intel. We achieved $2.2 billion in diverse spending in 2022, which is met and exceeded our goal for the year. A little further continuing on the same bar there to the right, you can see some of the awards that we've won for supply chain. 19 consecutive years in the top 25 for the Gartner supply chain. You can see a lot of, I'm not going to read all of these, but you can see some of those that we're very proud of when it comes to supply chain and supplier management. Down below, safety is always our #1 focus. Safe work environment. We really strive for an incident and injury-free workplace. Cost, market affordability, be cost competitive always, and design for our supply chain. Quality, meet our customers' expectations, learn once. In an industry like this, there's opportunity to make mistakes, but you learn from those mistakes and you get better and you don't repeat those mistakes and you move forward quickly. Be a trusted supply chain. Availability, on time, uninterrupted, flexible, and efficient. Technology side, we develop the solutions, differentiate the innovation, and that's so important. I put it there twice. Then sustainability, goal of net zero by 2040. Human rights is a big part. We'll get to that here in a second when it comes to our supply chain, because we do source globally. And then green chemistry. Our ecosystem, it's more than just our wafer fabs. It's everything that supports those fabs. You'll see talent is very important to us, and we try to source that talent locally. You see the education programs that we try to establish locally so that we are preparing that local ecosystem to develop that talent to bring it in. Skilled craft labor, advanced research. You can see that, again, the materials, the strategic minerals is something that we're really focusing on. Construction materials, chems and gases, the manufacturing side, both front end and back end, and the components that go to support our final products. And then adjacencies, you see our cybersecurity, our design tools and intellectual property, logistics and distribution. So, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities and touch points for the supply chain across all of Intel. Let me get this out of the way there. I apologize for that. Okay. And then really, our supply chain and responsibility program. So we really govern our supply chain tightly. There's a lot of things that Intel is important to us that we make sure that we are standing up and representing from a company and not supporting in certain areas. So environmental footprint, we obviously want to always minimize our environmental impact. Code of conduct, very important to us, ensuring the human rights of all the workers in our supply chain. Again, it's a global supply chain. It's a big job, but we have folks that are continually monitoring this and auditing it. Responsible mineral sourcing, supplier diversity and inclusion, and then sustainable chemistry as well for our factories. So, I mean, it's a very complex scope and challenges across the world that we actually are committed to building upon. What we've already accomplished, and we just continue to raise the bar for ourselves. So we continually challenge ourselves and raise our goals to progress and to get better nonstop through these areas. And then one last little note here, some of our investing that we actually do in our community. We operate in several different communities, and we really want Intel to be a reflection of those communities that we operate in. And one thing we always do as a company, and also encourage our suppliers and our employees to do, is to give back to those communities where we can. And this is just an example of some of the Arizona contributions that we've been able to do for the last year or so. We're looking forward to working with our Ohio community, our new Ohio employees, and really developing a strong and resilient supply chain for our factories there in Ohio. And with that is the end of my presentation, Chris.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sonny. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us and share the Intel story, and Mindy, you as well. And so now we're going to welcome The Ohio State University to the stage, and Derek Tillman Kelly from the College of Engineering is going to share about some of the work from the higher education side. So Derek, welcome, and really appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thanks, Chris. And hopefully you can see the slides.
We can.
I'm excited that I'm also joined by a colleague, Siddharth Rajan, who is a professor of electrical and computer engineering and material science and engineering, and happens to serve as Ohio State's chair for the Microelectronics Strategy Council. So Siddharth may chime in as appropriate, but I'll jump in to talk a little bit about, to talk about the Ohio Partnership for a Diverse and Inclusive Semiconductor Ecosystem and Workforce. So for context, the group is led by the Dean of the College of Engineering at Ohio State, Dr. Ayanna Howard. And then we sort of have three strands of work that's happening. One around curriculum development that is led by Siddharth and our colleague Tyler Grassman. And then we include faculty from a number of places. And that's also where we have connections with CTEC, Columbus State, and others. Second is around AR/VR, and it's led by Professor Maria Palazzi from ACAD, and includes a host of folks on and off campus. And then we're also working in tandem with colleagues at the University of Cincinnati and Ohio University because Intel has asked us to do AR/VR as a comprehensive state effort. And then lastly, around experiential learning, for us, that includes OHIO, or Ohio, which is our Makeathon or Hackathon, and then Scopes, which is out of our Patel Center, but I'll talk a little bit more about that momentarily. And so this project in particular sought to develop an iterative, student-centered, competency-based experiential curricular approach that it provides multiple entry and exit points to ultimately support an ecosystem of education and workforce for semiconductors throughout Ohio. And so we were intentional about partnering with a wide variety of institution types, including HBCUs and small liberal arts institutions as well. And so the partnership sort of set 5 or 6 primary goals related to our particular funding. And it's important to note that some of those partners are in those 7 other projects that Mindy raised. But one is that we would establish a framework for the ecosystem. 2, we would develop a host of curricular offerings, and I'll talk about some of the ones that have been approved in year 1. 3, we would focus sort of on awareness building. And then 4, we would the AR/VR piece. And then we talked about the number of degrees and certificates we produce. And then finally, we were going to explicitly focus on the number, percentage, and diversity of folks excited and prepared to enter the semiconductor workforce. And so we had 2 primary goals of this work, which was designing a framework to build the curricular offering necessary, with an intentional focus on including both hands-on experiential learning and then some of the more AR/VR components. But the goal was that this would be accessible regardless of folks' educational background or geographic location. And what you'll see is that we're starting with the sort of straightforward things, those who are in STEM disciplines, for example, but over time we'll build out in ways that invite folks who may not be as STEM experienced to engage in the offerings as well. And then we want to test them across institution types. So whether that's Ohio State or the Ohio 5, et cetera. And then for goal 2, it really was about how do we enhance the availability and access to clean room experiences, recognizing that part of what Intel needs are folks who are comfortable in the fab and requires clean room experience. And so part of what we're doing is thinking about how we network the clean rooms that are available across universities in the state, and then also how do we bring in the AR/VR to sort of do some of the early training that might allow folks to become familiar, but require less physical time in the clean room up front in ways that allow them to be more productive in those spaces. And so to date, here's sort of where we are. For curricular development, goals for the first year were to review our current offerings, identify strengths and gaps, sort of collate what could be degrees, minors, and certificates from what was already available, and then additionally solidify where we wanted to focus for AR and VR. And to date, there are a couple of key things that have been accomplished. So we've worked through the process of approving minors and certificates at the undergraduate and graduate level in some key areas: semiconductor devices, semiconductor fabrication technology, and then electro-optometrics that I'll share a second. And then we've started to build out the actual 3D environment in ways that will enable folks to get a sense of what being in a clean room is like. And so when we share these slides, you'll get access to some links that will help you see the progress that has been made. And so I won't do that at the moment. And so some things that are coming up are sort of threefold. One, the minors and certificates that were initially approved predominantly lived in our electrical and computer engineering department. And so we're ensuring that it includes broad scale interdisciplinarity for consideration. We are continuing to revise our strategy around collaboration, thinking about how we explicitly ensure that someone might be able to move from CTEC to COTC or Columbus State into Ohio State, depending on what they need from a degree perspective. And then we'll continue to build out around AR, VR. And so this document sort of gives you a sense of what we were attempting to do. So given the 3 arenas of certificates, minors, and such, we wanted to think about if a student came in a particular discipline, how might one of these certificates round out their experience that might ultimately shorten their lived experience in terms of getting up to speed with Intel. And so you don't need to necessarily explore this in full, but it starts to give you a sense of how we might take someone in mechanical engineering and ensure that they have a broad enough sense and understanding of the semiconductor industry that would enable them, for example, to become a process engineer. And then additionally, when we think about AR, VR, the Ohio State team has started from a place of safety. As folks may know, one of the key components of Intel's own culture is around safety. And so given our conversations with institutions across the state, there were some spaces where they thought students could have a better understanding, for example, of how to be safe around a wet bench. And then additionally, we are working on things around clean room orientation, ensuring that you have the right PPE, for example, on when doing particular activities. And so this is a visual replication of what one might find in a clean room around the wet bench. And you see the labeling of how we started to think about what the interactions might need to be for someone who was using a AR or VR headset, for example. And then secondly, I sort of intentionally skipped the piece around KT3, which is the third component of our particular project, because it's around purchasing of equipment. And rather than telling you the kinds of equipment, it's more important to see the ways in which that equipment begins to be used. And so additionally, when we think about student experiential opportunities, there are a couple things that have happened so far. So one, Intel was able to participate in Ohio State's March Makeathon, in which students took what is currently the gown or bunny suit that you would use in a clean room and sort of think about how we might enhance it to ensure that folks are particularly clean and avoiding sort of the known complications of clean room experience. And then we've additionally launched or soft launched our student community of practice and engagement, which is meant to invite students from across the university, regardless of discipline, who are interested in things like semiconductor, into a network where they can meet folks in the field, and then also think about experiences that will help them be better prepared for the work ahead. And so with that, I'll stop talking, Chris. If there are any questions, certainly happy to answer, but turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Derek. And as I just put in the chat for all of our attendees, you're welcome to start dropping any questions in the chat. You can send them to everyone so our speakers can hear, or if you just want to send it to me, as I mentioned, Jeff and I will kind of combine forces and join at the end to moderate some of the Q&A with all the different panelists. And so next up, we're going to welcome Ted Geer to the virtual stage. Ted is from One Columbus. He's been leading their economic development efforts and really part of the team that has made all of this happen. And so it's such a fascinating project from start to finish. Ted's been right there, and their economic development work kind of brings higher education and industry and all of it together, government as well. And so Ted, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate you joining us, and we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Good afternoon, everybody. And first off, thanks to Ohio State, to Ohio Department of Education, Higher Education, Chris, and OhioX. Thank you all for hosting this. It's a great opportunity to continue spreading the good word around this industry that we know is going to be such an integral part of how we think about Ohio and really how we think about the Midwest into the future. So thanks for that. I'm going to pull up some slides here really quick. All righty, you got those?
Yes, we do.
All right, thanks. So I wanted to start off just talking about the Innovation Exchange itself. You know, when Jeff showed me the exchange recently and walked me through it, just like he did for you today, you know, I was really struck by its potential, especially for grant writing. I wanted to kind of highlight that, and just something I wanted to get out there today. I've done some major grant writing in my career in previous roles and in this one for the region. And, you know, the federal funding lanes and competitive funding lanes are so wide now. They're through, you know, since the pandemic, there's been so much federal money and state money out there. And a lot of it is through those competitive grants. So this is a perfect tool, a great example of a nexus that you can bring forward and save some time and also bring in partners in a cool way. So thanks for that. Alrighty, so we're going to start off with just a little bit about our region in Central Ohio, the Columbus region, kind of what we do, what that economic development practice is, and then we'll get a little bit into semiconductor as well. So this is how economic development is organized in the state of Ohio. There are 6 regions that are all organized under a state level stakeholder, Jobs Ohio. It was founded 12 years ago, and as well as this network setup was really put in place in a big way 12 years ago, wherein each county was assigned to one of these partners. It's been a tremendously successful model for the state. Another key feature is that it is private. So our economic development organizations, Jobs Ohio and One Columbus, my employer, are private nonprofits. That sounds like you're maybe slicing it a little thin between that, for-profit or nonprofit, but really government or nonprofit. Oftentimes this function is in the government. It's in the mayor's office or the governor's office. The advantage of it being private is really, well, two things. First, our funding model is not dependent on appropriations from the General Assembly, which really makes us really nimble. It doesn't expose us to politics in the same way. It allows us to have a steady and long-term view of the potential of our state. And second, it allows us to be much more nimble in negotiations and discussions, private and high-level discussions with companies, to be coming from a private lens rather than a public lens. So it's been a great model for Ohio, and it's culminated in projects like Intel, like the Honda and LG battery plant, like Amgen. Those are all three Central Ohio examples in three very different areas: semiconductors, life sciences, and EVs and batteries. And those would have all been zeros a few years ago. So just a really good example of how this model has created an environment where Ohio is leading the future. These are some of our corporate community members in Central Ohio. We have 5 Fortune 500 headquarters and 16 Fortune 1000 headquarters. This is also a great slide to illustrate the diversity of our economic base. In fact, no sector accounts for more than 17% of employment in Central Ohio. And again, as I just said, with those three emerging industries, we're not taking that for granted. In fact, we are charging right at more dynamic industries and more emerging industries with global ties. This is a slide that ends up in just about every deck we use, and I know Ohio has a version, and many other metros in Ohio have a version of this. Wherein you look at what percentage of the U.S. population is within a one-day drive, 10-hour drive. That's a one-day truck delivery time from Columbus. It's 45% of the U.S. population. And if you include Canada, I think it's north of 60% via Toronto and the population concentrations in Ontario. So this is something that's obviously always been an asset for us, but it is that much more so in this moment of onshoring and reshoring of industrial capital to the United States. When you're talking about vertically integrated supply chains just within North America that have been, fully global for decades, this stuff starts mattering quite a bit more. So it's a key advantage of ours and one that we're pressing. Talking a little bit about the work that we do, we can kind of look back at some of our results from 2022, and then we'll kind of turn and look forward at what's in the pipeline, who's sort of kicking the tires on Central Ohio right now, who's looking at us and what that means. So these are our 2022 project announcements, and we have it broken down with and without Intel. Of course, Intel is a standout and major investment. And when you back that out, you can still see relative to our annual goal, we did pretty well. We did not hit the jobs number. However, we exceeded our capital investment goal for the year and exceeded our payroll creation goal for the year. And what that means when you look at how those numbers stack together, these are high quality jobs, high wage jobs, and in many cases, high wage manufacturing jobs. And these are exactly, thanks to those advantages I mentioned, the logistical advantages, exactly the sorts of jobs and growth that we want to see here. So a tremendously successful year. Also note that the 5,300 jobs without Intel, 5,400 jobs, most of those will be coming online before Intel's positions will. So, just to give you an idea, we're adding over 5,000 a year, 5, 6, 7,000 a year, even beyond a mega project like Intel. This is my favorite slide, I think, in this deck. I love showing this slide. This is all of the auto and semiconductor major announcements across the United States from 2021 to 2022. You can really see the urgency of this moment. And when I talk about the onshoring of industrial capital, here it is illustrated. You can see, of course, our numbers: Intel's investment of 3,000 jobs and 20 billion, Honda and LG, 2,200 jobs and 3.5 billion. But you look at some of these other numbers, a lot of Bs on here, a lot of major semiconductor investments, and we have it rolled up in the bottom left there, nearly $200 million of, or excuse me, 200 billion, pardon me, with a B, of announcements between 2021 and 2022 in semiconductor, and $40 billion of EV announcements. So, this project in this moment, it's all symptomatic of something much, much bigger. And that's something to get really, really excited about. However, it also means that the competitive the imperative is actually greater than ever as well. And we're competing with other regions in a way we never have, while cooperating at a national level around many of the economic and national security needs that we know we have. We also need to step it up and make sure that we can continue to attract investments like this and build out those clusters and integrated supply chains. Alrighty, so turning from kind of looking backward from our results last year to looking forward. So this is our pipeline. What that means is when a company calls us and says, hey, we're thinking about Columbus for our investment, we get them into our pipeline. This means there's an active discussion around a potential project. Now, these companies are talking to other regions, other states as well, but this is the ones that we're in the game for at the moment. You can see it's 120 about active projects, and 27% is semiconductor related. A good portion of that is Intel's supply chain, which will come here, of course, over the coming years to support the fabs. But 56% manufacturing. I'll just draw a couple of key points out of this. 56% manufacturing is incredibly high, and 10% office is incredibly low. Normally, that would be north of 30%, 40% office. Of course, since the pandemic, the meaning of work and of office work has been shifting, and so that's really kind of affected the office market. But again, right at that same moment, you just have this urgency around manufacturing, around industrial capital. So you can see that really illustrated well here. International at 51%, typically, again, never more than maybe a third would be international, and we're over half international right now. So more countries, more companies, more places are thinking about Columbus and Ohio than ever before. And 17% high impact. That's the last number I'll draw out of here, the bottom right number. So we'll call that about 20 projects, maybe 15 or 20 projects. Those are projects with at least $500 million of capital expenditure or 500 jobs. And that's a really high number, almost 20 of those projects. Normally, we would have never had pre-COVID, never would have been more than 2 or 3. And today we're at nearly 20. So, as much as we have these huge headline projects on the board, we are not done. There is more to come. And that's really, really exciting, not just because of those projects in a bubble, but the cross connections, the commonalities in the supply chains, in the logistics needs, in the global connections. Those are all really, really important and special opportunities against this moment. And last, I will hit this very briefly. This is way a little down in the economic development weeds, but I just wanted to bring this forward. Intel is, of course, a major. It's on a very large site. It's almost 1,000 acres. It's going to be the facilities are going to be quite large, but not all these suppliers are going to be of a similar Mondo scale, and all the other semiconductor projects that are looking at Columbus right now, which are rolled up here, are going to be of that scale. This is something that we can actually accommodate pretty well right now, and that means that, again, what does it bring us back to? What's the competitive imperative here? It is to cluster these investments. And I think Sunny did reference this as well, the co-location with their supply chain. That's really the model that we're going for, because it's the model that we're competing against. When you look at just within semiconductors, if you look at the installations in East Asia, in Taiwan, in South Korea, in many cases, they are master planned, large scale science and technology parks. And we are competing in the same markets with similar products to those areas. So the urgency is really around making this as inefficient of an overall installation, as efficient of an ecosystem of a cluster as possible. And that's going to apply to semiconductors just as much as it's going to apply to, again, the EV sector, life sciences, as well as other traditional manufacturing sectors. So I think that is all I had. I'm certainly available for questions and follow-ups. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, Ted, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And Jeff, I see are on as well. And so now will be our Q&A for all the panelists. And so at any point, if you had a question, again, feel free to drop it in the chat, or you can DM it to myself and we can work it in. And Ted, I actually got one that we can start with you on that came from just the last portion of your comments. You mentioned that cluster and trying to be really smart about the planning around that. And I think at least I heard, well, the question was, could you expand on what that exactly means? And I heard kind of the park development. So is that like a an entire region, so across kind of like central Ohio in this case, or Ohio more broadly, or is it like a single kind of like industrial park almost, where everything's within a 5 or 10 minute drive?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for that. It's really both. It's sort of all of the above. You can go micro or macro when you think about that concept. When I think about it in terms of the Columbus region, it's really making sure that those Intel fabs that are in New Albany within the region, have proximate to the fabs. What kind of needs to be proximate to the fabs? Those the maybe a supplier that has equipment in the factory and might need to serve that equipment quickly. That's a great example of someone that might need to be nearby if they have a service agreement, say, where they need to be there quickly. So making sure that can happen. And in many cases we're competing with Phoenix, of course, which is a major market for Intel already. And it's quite difficult to acquire land close to some of those installations. And you look at beyond Intel and the other semiconductor, markets in the United States, it's quite difficult to actually get proximate to some of those sites. And so, when you look at our site, it's in a quite rural, exurban setting, and there's plenty of opportunity to master plan and think about, again, how to lock in those that are closest, that need to be closest. And then, to kind of take the second part of the question, you can keep going bigger and bigger. Look at what Minnie brought forward with the Semiconductor Education and Research Program. That's a statewide effort, right? And that's the workforce pipelines are not something that can just live in a city or a county. It really has to be at that state level, with state level coordination, like you're seeing from the Ohio Department of Higher Education today, and as well as many, many others. And so, you kind of need to double click and make sure that you are serving, what needs to be across the street is across the street, but whatever we can do to actually build a better framework statewide is just going to make this a better outcome. So, it's a cluster, in a very, very close in sense, but also in a way that really ties Ohio and the Midwest together against a globalized and macro scale sector.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Ted. And Jeff, I don't know if you have any, I compiled a few too, but want to make sure I give you some space as well.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So I had a couple questions about how people join, how do institutions join the Ohio Innovation Exchange? And let me just say a couple words about that. It is a public good funded by the Ohio Department of Higher Ed, and pretty much any 2-year, 4-year technical school or institution can join at no cost. They just need to reach out to me and I can connect them with the process. Actually, most of the data curation process is automated. There's a few things that are manual to kind of kickstart the process, but it moves pretty quickly, and we'd be happy to welcome folks. And with that, I did have a question for Sonny, if he's still here. This is a purely logistical kind of question, Sonny, but if a supplier would like to get engaged with Intel, what does that process look like?
So we have a supplier. Thanks for the question, first off, Jeff. We have a supplier.intel.com website. We refer all suppliers to. It asks them a few questions about the business. What, are they a diversity supplier? Things of that nature. What type of services do they provide, or how do they see themselves as being of value to Intel? And then we evaluate those, and we respond back to those suppliers. And in Ohio alone, we've seen thousands of folks that are interested in working with Intel. So a lot of people are figuring that out. But yes, supplier.intel.com is the best way to start that journey.
Excellent. Thank you. It's back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Jeff and Sonny, for that. And I had one come in for Derek. And so Derek, if you're able to come back on and unmute, you mentioned in your presentation clean rooms. Could you talk a little bit about how did those exist before this Intel announcement, or is that type of investment something that has come in post-announcement as everything's been built up? And then maybe my commentaries, if you could maybe share a little bit about all the investment on time and energy and resources that have come post-Intel.
Yeah, so for many of the institutions, right, so Ohio State already had some aspects of semiconductor education happening. And so we have over on our West campus, Nanotech West, which is our primary clean room facility. And so no, most institutions, in fact, can't afford the full scale creation of a new clean room. It's millions of dollars at any one time. But when we proposed the project to Intel, what we instead said was we can reorganize some things in our clean room and then add some additional equipment that will allow us to do this work. And so one of the thoughts was, because we are pretty limited on capacity, we would think about ways to increase capacity by doing one of two things: either streamlining the ways in which people can move through the clean room, or getting some of the training that usually happens in the clean room to happen before it, so that they are better prepared. The sort of unique thing at Ohio State is that Nanotech West was by and large a research-based clean room. And colleagues at Arizona State, when they engaged with Intel, decided to sort of merge their teaching and research into one space and create some efficiencies that way. We recently decided to actually keep them separate, and there was a secondary clean room on the primary academic campus for Columbus that had been previously used, and we've done some investment. We've leveraged resources from Intel as well as matching at the institution level to do that. And so on order of magnitude of $500,000 to do some short-term cleanup to ensure that we could do capacity. And there are two reasons really for that change. Nanotech West is on West Campus, which creates some issues when you start talking about scheduling classes and getting students out there, whereas the other lab is in Dries, directly on the academic campus where most students are. And so it'll actually end up being more efficient for them. And so rather than force folks out to West Campus, we're going to do more of that internal training here. And so Darth can certainly talk about that any deeper if I'm missing things from that perspective.
No, I think you got it. Thanks, Derek. Yeah, so we used to have a class where we used to teach clean room, how to use a clean room, how to make semiconductor devices to students for many years. And we're now back. So we're basically setting that up again. Over COVID, that class shut down. Now we're getting it back. And with the investment, I think we'll have a really nice class where students will go in and they'll be building their transistors and they'll go through the entire process. And I think that's very important for engineers who are going to work in a clean room to understand how sensitive things are when you're trying to build an actual semiconductor device. You can only learn it when you build your own device. No amount of reading or other things can teach you that. So it's only when you actually go through it and things don't work and you figure out how sensitive the process is, you can then appreciate the scale at which a company like Intel is operating with making billions of transistors at the same time. I think so. We're really focused on that. We're going to start in autumn. Our class is going to start. We're building up everything. We're really excited. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot of students come in.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Ted, a question came in for you. You had mentioned 27% of the pipeline is semiconductor related. Can you talk about how much, and you mentioned some of, a good amount, or at least of that was from the Intel kind of follow on, but what was that timeline like post Intel announcement about a year and a half ago in terms of the outreach from the suppliers or the ecosystem? And how long is that still happening where more and more companies are reaching out when they're seeing all this development?
Yeah, thanks for that question. And these suppliers, they're really critical to this sector, to the semiconductor industry. They're sort of the flip side of the coin from the manufacturers, and they're just really key piece, key intertwined piece to the way this stuff works. So yeah, we've been having tremendous conversations across that supply chain, and again more broadly in the semiconductor sector, really since the early days. There are a number of trade shows and conventions that we've gone to. I'll be going to one next month, the big North American one, and working with them there. Intel has provided tremendous support throughout. So those are ongoing conversations. Yeah, it's been awesome to have those, to be exposed to a set of global companies from lots of different places, multiple continents, looking at Ohio. And candidly, I mean, sometimes we're literally pointing Ohio out on a map. And again, it's just funny to think about, how much this is going to be part of who we are, and to be working against this moment. It's a special opportunity. So yeah, no, those have been great conversations. And I'll also note that in many cases, those same logistical advantages that I mentioned, that of course advantage Intel and this investment, are true more broadly of any other investments these suppliers might want to bring along. So in many cases, there are because of those major investments that I showed off, across the country, there's really a need for them to continue the suppliers to continue to invest here in things like training, research and development, manufacturing and assembly. And so in many cases, we're competing directly for those investments as well as, just the base investment to serve Intel.
Great. Well, thank you, Ted. Appreciate that. And
Thanks.
with just a couple minutes left, Jeff, would love to welcome you back and for any final questions on your end or any final parting comments from the Ohio Innovation Exchange.
Thank you so much, Chris. I just want to thank all our presenters today for taking some time out and participating in this event. Ohio is definitely on the move, and it's remarkable to see the progress and all these incredible projects that are being spawned. And thank you, Chris, for your organization. OhioX is just a tremendous partner throughout this whole effort. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, we do as well. And Jeff, thanks for making this happen and being partners. And would love to also echo on all of our panelists and presenters today, and also everyone for attending. Thanks so much for jumping in and sharing who you were. I loved seeing all the different locations. This was a Central Ohio focused conversation, but I saw people from Cleveland and Southeastern Ohio and all sorts of different parts, and that was pretty neat. And so Jeff also mentioned that we do record these, and so we will have these up on our YouTube and do some follow-up from the Innovation Exchange after this. And so very much appreciate everyone for joining, and thank you so much again for taking the time, and all of our panelists for sharing their work. So thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate your time. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.